It's mad that for all that people bang on about slavery, they only bang on about transatlantic slavery that finished 400 years ago and was ended by the British. Nobody bangs on about the fact that there's more slaves now in the world than there was 400 years ago at the peak of transatlantic slavery.
Leo Kearse, welcome to the show.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How's the UK? I'm heading back soon.
Where are you now?
In Austin, Texas.
Oh, really? Yeah, I mean, the UK's all right. We've got Omicron going around at the moment. I've got Omicron right now, in case you're wondering why I sound kind of blocked up.
You're kidding.
So everybody's got it. Like, basically, I'm always out doing gigs, doing shows and stuff. I think I might have actually got it at a TV studio because I went in and everybody had a cold, and Omicron is a cold, basically. So yeah, I had coronavirus. I had like the original and best first wave of coronavirus back in August. And that absolutely floored me. You know what I mean? I was like, I wish I'd got vaccinated. But that was bad. And Omicron, I mean, it's still bad, but it's like a cold. It's not like, it's not like
this is Diet Coke.
What is Diet Coke?
Yeah, it's Diet Coke compared with full fat Coke. So you've got like the big full original hit, and then you've got like the new version without caffeine, without anything else in.
Yeah, which actually makes you fatter because your body thinks it's had sugar. And it hasn't. So,
I don't know. Yeah. I saw that Omicron seems to be a little bit more transmissible, but far less deadly or something. There's only been one person that's died from it so far.
Hugely more transmissible, 3.5 times more transmissible, and COVID was already a very transmissible disease. So Omicron, basically, if you're near somebody who's got it, you're probably going to get it. Except, sometimes you won't. Like my fiance doesn't have it. It's a lot less. It's kind of flat. The severity of hospitalizations is kind of flat at about 25 to 30%. Whereas with original COVID, the severity started off very low for like young people, and then rose dramatically for older people. So it was up around 85-90% for older people. So this one's less severe overall, but slightly more severe for young people, which is great because one of the bad things about coronavirus is like it didn't affect children. So all these annoying little snotty faced brats are running about enjoying themselves. And I think if there's any justice, I mean, I did like how coronavirus went for like the fat and the elderly and the vulnerable. What I couldn't believe was like the Tories tried to stop it. Like, coronavirus is basically enacting Tory policy, or what I've been told Tory policy is. And then the Tories try and stop. Like, next election, I'm voting for coronavirus. It's doing a much better job at, like, wiping out, like, vulnerable people than the Tories are.
Yeah, it's so weird, because I learned that viruses, they tend to get less lethal over time, but more transmissible. And this is what we're seeing, right? That Omicron, because killing the host is actually a really rubbish way to reproduce. So
yeah, that's why Ebola doesn't get anywhere because, everybody dies before they can give it to
too lethal,
someone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a strange one. I saw J.K. Rowling got herself in bother again, eh?
Yeah. So she tweeted, so basically the police in Scotland's got a really weird government at the moment, so they're trying to be super woke. So there's sort of, and I think it's because they're propped up by the Green Party. But the SNP, Scotland's government, they're trying to be super woke with all this sort of like, if you look at any adverts for the Scottish government, anything, you'd think Scotland was like the most multiracial, cosmopolitan. Everybody's dancing around with beards and makeup and, in a tutu and stuff. And Scotland's not like that at all.
You've got one black person.
Yeah, it's got literally one black person. It's like Scotland is 96% white. So it's bizarre that they're trying to push this image of like they're a Benetton advert or like like a university
it's a tiny, tiny world. If
you look at the SNP, they think that Scotland's like a university prospectus cover. It's but. So they're bringing through all this like woke legislation, and usually it's just used by them as a lever to do their dirty work. So, for example, they brought through the hate crime bill, and then they didn't use the actual bill, but they used the sort of the emotion or the momentum behind it to depose so one of Sturgeon's enemies, one of Sturgeon's rivals on the front bench, Joanna Cherry. She was knocked off of the front bench because she was accused of being transphobic, and she's not transphobic. She's she's a middle-aged lesbian. She's just a nice person, but anything can be construed as transphobic. It's one of those words. It's like calling somebody a witch. If you call someone racist or transphobic, it's you might as well accuse. No, like I never meet any genuine racists anymore. I used to when I lived in Scotland, but like in the 90s there were genuine racists. Now it's very hard to find any genuine racists.
There's people that say things that can be misconstrued as racism, and then that slime is really difficult to get off them.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just if you accuse someone of racism or transphobia, you can just destroy them. But yeah, so J.K. Rowling, so Police Scotland have changed the law so that if a biological male or a man basically rapes someone, but then says that they're a woman, Police Scotland will be like, yeah, you're a woman, and then they'll be prosecuted and treated as a woman and sent to a women's prison, even if they're making no effort to look like what we traditionally consider to be a woman. And obviously there's huge issues with this. Women in prisons are incredibly vulnerable. So if you send biological males in, then that's obviously going to cause problems, particularly if that person's already a rapist. And you can see why a rapist would want to go to a women's prison so they can continue raping. So J.K. Rowling did a tweet. I mean, you might have it in front of you, but it was quite a clever. It was a play on this sort of Orwellian newspeak of because what happened under communism was basically you had to say the opposite of reality was true, and every day you were forced to say the opposite of reality was true. Whether it was things are getting better, we've all got enough food to eat, Stalin's a great leader. You had to chant all this stuff, just as you do with woke ideology. You've got the tweet from J.K. Rowling was: "War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. The penist individual who raped you is a woman." Yeah, so I mean, quite a pithy, incisive, and clear. You can really see what she's saying. So obviously that's denounced as transphobic when it's not transphobic. I mean, she's not. Obviously, J.K. Obviously, there's transphobes out there, but I think J.K. Rowling and me, probably you, we recognise that transgender women and transgender men who really transition and really put the effort in and want to live as that gender are genuinely. I know transgender women; they're genuinely transgender. They're genuinely women, and I see them as women. But if you're just a bloke who's saying that they're transgender, using, exploiting the self-identification rules to say that they're a woman, it's like, no, you're not.
Well, I don't understand. The thing that I don't understand is that seems to me to undermine genuine trans people's rights more than criticizing people that do that. You shouldn't want to have your movement and your identity co-opted by people who genuinely don't believe it and just see it as an opportunistic way to move themselves to a different type of prison or to get out of particular types of culpability. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's scary, man. Yeah. I don't know. So I've spent since I've been out here in Austin, I've spent a good bit of time with a girl called Blaire White. Are you familiar with her? Oh yeah. Yeah. So I've spent a good bit of time with Blaire, who is a trans woman, and fucking hell, man. Like, it's the first time that I've spent a significant amount of time around somebody that's trans. And it's really been like an eye-opener to me because it's easy to see her. I mean, have you seen what Blaire looks like? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, so she's about as womanly as you're going to get. She looks like someone who's about to step onto Love Island. And it would be impossible to think of her as anything else but a woman, and she is pre-op. She's not had the downstairs surgery, but I mean, dude, well, a lot of transgender women don't have the surgery because then you've got like there's a 1 in 3 chance you'll never orgasm again. No
it's
way.
Not, it's not a particularly good or successful surgery to have.
Okay,
so,
I didn't know that. But dude, there's no way that I couldn't see. And this is the thing. I said this to Michael Malice, who I was out with, and I'm like, look, dude, is it wrong for me to say that it is so much easier for me to treat Blaire like a woman because she looks and acts and sounds and is shaped like a woman?
Yeah. No, it's absolutely not wrong. And that's what, all, I think there's such a debate over, like, what is a woman? When does a transgender woman become a woman? And I think there's obviously a hotness rule. There's obviously like, if you reach a certain level of hotness, you can use the women's toilets, you can use the women's changing rooms. And if you're just like a bloke with a beard and stuff, no, you can't use the women's changing rooms because you're not a woman. And I'd apply this to biological women as well. So, I mean, a lot of the TERFs who were, criticizing me for saying transgender women are women, I was looking at some of them, and it's like, you're barely classifiable as a mammal. Like, how can you be sitting there like this dumpy, mid-50s, like, hairy chin, Harridan battle axe, being like, oh, these women are women. It's like, you're not a woman. Like, Blaire White is way more of a woman than some of these TERFy old bints. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, Blaire she's committed so much to being a woman that she even drives badly. So that was being in her car. She's got a bright pink Mustang,
Nice.
So I pulled out of the gym and drove past where Joe Rogan's recording studio is, which is supposed to be semi-secret, but pretty much everybody in Austin knows where it is. And there's this bright pink fucking Ford Mustang outside. I'm like, if anyone wanted to advertise not only that Blaire White's on his show, but also where the studio is, it's like, pull that thing up outside. But yeah, man, I mean, she literally even drives like a woman. And it's so, it's been really eye-opening, really eye-opening to spend some time around somebody who, I think that the first time, or one of the times that she did mushrooms, she looked in the mirror and for the first time she saw herself as a woman. And you think, okay, that's somebody who genuinely has a discordance between how they see themselves and how the rest of the world sees them and how they feel inside. And that this kind of reframed, born in the wrong body, gender identity, all of this sort of stuff. And not that I wasn't sympathetic previously, but I'm even more empathetic now. I can genuinely see the trials and tribulations of somebody who wants to be something different. And why the fuck, in whose world, how much of a cunt would I need to be to not call her she? Like, I would need to be a colossal prick to not do that. So of course I'm absolutely sweet with that. But on the flip side, like you say, some guy, fucking hairy chested, 6'3" guy with massive hands and a fucking beard, that decides to go and attack somebody and is then just uses a self-identification rule to get out of that. That feels to me like more of an attack on trans rights than saying that shouldn't be the case.
Exactly, because stories like that tend to make it into the news and onto social media, so then everybody thinks that's what transgender people are, when in reality, most transgender people, for a start, a lot of them pass. A lot of them, you walk past them in the street, you wouldn't even know. Like Blaire White, if you met her, you wouldn't know that she's not originally, biologically female. So, most of the sort of transgender people, certainly the ones that I know, they want to get on with their lives and not have this spotlight thrown on them that's brought there by basically blokes saying that they're women, trying to exploit. There's some funny examples, like Will Franken, who's actually from Texas. I don't know if you know him.
No.
He's a comedian, really funny comedian, but a bit crazy. But he sort of preempted all this about 5 years ago. He basically said he was a woman, and then he started getting lots of work with the BBC and stuff. And but he wasn't. He just put a frock on, and that was it. But it was really funny. Like you'd turn on Radio 4, and they'd be like, "We're here with a female comedian." He started calling himself Sarah Franken, female comedian Sarah Franken. He'd be like, "Hey, how you doing?" You know what I mean? I remember I booked him for a show that ran Hate and Live, really fun show. It's basically improvised hatred based on audience suggestions. Really fun to do, but it was at the Edinburgh Fringe. And so he or she, Sarah Franken at the time, because he's gone back to being a man now, But Sarah Franken booked her, and she was standing outside smoking a cigarette, and she was like sort of huddled under the awning because it was raining. And the bouncer saw her, the 6'2" bloke in a frock, with a wig, sort of smoking a cigarette. The bouncer was like, "Can you move away from the entrance, please?" And Sarah just turned around and was like, "You're gonna make a lady smoke in the rain?" Like, it was the funniest thing I've ever seen, man.
Fuck, man. I don't know. It's all up in the air. But then J.K. Rowling's been written out of the Fantastic Beasts trailer. Do you see that? That's just got released today.
Man, it's a ridiculous. Like, it's ridiculous. And like, obviously somebody like J.K. Rowling, she's got her billions of pounds. She's still making money from the Fantastic Beasts and whatever, but she's not said anything that's particularly horrific. She said stuff that maybe I wouldn't agree with. Like, but other people say stuff that I don't agree with. I don't think they should be like, removed from
her own body of work.
Exactly, yeah.
J.K. Rowling's name has been downgraded in a trailer promoting the latest film of her Fantastic Beasts series amid a row over views on trans identification. Unlike previous adverts for the franchise, Rowling's name barely features in the 2.5-minute trailer for the third installment, Fantastic Beasts something, something, something. The new trailer opens with the caption, "Warner Bros. Invites you," while the 2018 film said, "J.K. Rowling invites you," and credited her with writing and producing her film. Kiri Tunks, co-founder of the campaign group Women's Place UK, told the Daily Telegraph, "This attempt to detach a female author from her own creative achievement is astonishing, but is just the latest episode in a long history of women being erased." So now you have the intersecting groups of concern coming in. Okay, so we're actually more bothered about women and their progress, or are we more bothered about protecting trans people and their progress and people that aren't actually trans and are pretending to be?
Yeah.
It's a difficult one, man. I don't know how this ends up finishing, but J.K. Rowling continues to get herself into hot water quite easily.
Yeah, just by saying stuff that's, fairly pithy, and you can see the point she's making, and it's like, we should be able to make points. We should be able to say that, like, if a man rapes a woman, he's, there's an issue with him then saying that he's a woman and going to a women's prison. It's really obvious truth. This is the thing that really surprised me about wokeism, is how similar it is to communism, in that you're not allowed to say really obvious truths, and everybody has to pretend that the lie is the truth. Against
the sort of party line, so to speak. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know, man. Especially given the fact that you don't need to have gone through legal changes, you don't need to have shown that you've been transitioning for a period of time. And it's like, fuck, do you know what it is? If you haven't done those things, and if you rape somebody, like, the benefit of the doubt gets to go out of the window. You've sequestered any goodwill from society if that happens. And who the fuck's supposed to be defending rapists here? How have we got onto a situation where rapists are being defended?
Yeah, but the ideological strength of the sort of trans rights, or a certain section of the trans rights movement, I don't think they represent, I don't think they speak for a lot of trans people, but the ideological purity overrides, any sort of real world questions, or, anything like the fact that, what about a rapist? It's ridiculous. I was talking to India Willoughby, who's a trans journalist. So she called Andy No a Nazi. So, I just did a tweet about how, the word Nazi has been devalued so much that, this gay BAME journalist, the son of Vietnamese refugees, who, exposes corruption and hypocrisy and violence on the left, is deemed a Nazi. And, she probably, it turned out somebody added to the thread saying that India Willoughby had described him as an Uncle Tom, which is obviously a viciously racist thing to say. But he misgendered India when he said it, and India was like, "You've misgendered me," as if that was the thing that we should all be paying attention to, not her racism.
Use of Uncle Tom. Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
Fuck, dude, my favorite Andy No story is a video that anyone can go and watch on YouTube, and it's other people being mistaken for Andy No Antifa rallies. Have you seen this? Oh fuck, dude! It is so. You need to do a video on this. So there's a guy Asian dude walking through a Antifa like rally thing, people holding placards. There's a guy holding a camera, and they're shouting at him, going, "Are you fucking Andy? No, fuck you, Andy!" And then people start going up to him, and this dude, he's got a mask on, right? So he comes up to them, takes the mask off, and he says, "Are you being serious? Like, this is the third time that this has happened to me now." And the guys are like, "What? So you're telling me that just because I'm Asian and I look like Andy No, that you're going to abuse me from the side of the street?" And the person that stood next to the guy holding the camera goes, "Well, it kind of seems like you're doing it on purpose." And he's like, "Doing what? Being Asian?" Fuck, man.
That's amazing.
It's so good.
Amazing.
But that's the most pejorative thing. Like, think about how fucking judgmental that is.
It's so deeply racist to say, like, there's an Asian guy, possibly Andy No, let's get him. Like,
what about the government's conversion therapy bill? What's happening there?
well, I just did a video about it. So basically, the government's bringing through this bill to ban conversion therapy, which sounds like a good idea on the face of it, because conversion therapy historically has involved administering electric shocks to gay people while they watch gay porn, which obviously doesn't stop them being gay. It just introduces them to a fetish. Like all kinds of laying on of hands, praying. Like Lou Reed was subject to it. This only stopped stopped being administered by the state or by official authorities in, I think it was about the 70s. So it's relatively recent thing that stopped. In the old days they did things like transplanting testicles to try and make people straight. It was crazy and barbaric.
What, like the testicles were the center, the epicenter of the gayness?
I guess that's what their thought was. It's the epicenter of your sexuality. So
that is fucking medieval, isn't it? Jesus.
And even lobotomies and stuff as well. So it's crazy because homosexuality up until like the 60s or the 70s was actually classified as a mental illness. So obviously it's barbaric. And it still goes on, sometimes, particularly with, religious groups. And it's bad. But what the government's conversion therapy bill does is it also bans, it classifies any sort of treatment for gender dysphoria other than actually transitioning, classifies that as conversion therapy. So but a lot of transgender people, especially children, teenagers, they're presented they're confused about their sexuality, or they've got depression or anxiety, or there's other things that are affecting it. And between the data we've got at the moment says that between 60 and 90% of them will reconcile to their biological gender, their natal gender, if allowed to. But the system we've got at the moment is just funneling them into treatment,
because the only current procedure which is permitted is to reassign gender. Yeah,
so they're put on puberty blockers, which are, they say, oh, this is just to buy time, but it's not. It starts a sort of cascade, and they're put into a sort of conveyor belt that leads them to be given cross-sex hormones and then surgery, and it happens surprisingly quickly, considering the sort of how dramatic and how powerful the side effects of some of these things are. So a lot of the drugs, the hormones, the puberty blockers, they can cause infertility, they can weaken bones, cause all sorts of problems. And also the surgery, if you remove breasts, that's permanent. If you transition the genitals with surgery, that's permanent and causes infertility as well. So there's a lot of issues with this, but children and this industry has just sort of exploded. Just a few years ago, there was just one gender transition clinic in the States. Now there's over 300. So this huge industry has blown up, and they're not allowed to have a sort of free and honest and open debate around it, because academia and the medical industry is systemically woke. So any questioning of any of this is seen as transphobic. And is silenced and shut down. And any academics that research it Even if they're taking a balanced look and being sympathetic to transgender people, they get denounced and their books are banned and they get thrown out of their universities. So there isn't the data and there isn't the debate and the sort of academic research that is really needed to judge what's best. And this bill sort of adds to that by outlawing any treatment other than gender reassignment surgery.
Yeah, so what's being implied there is that nobody that could suffer with gender dysphoria would want to not continue with their gender dysphoria. Like if you were to try and reverse that, or if someone was to try and stress test your ideas around your own gender identity, that is also now put underneath trying to turn gay people straight again.
Yeah, exactly. It's classed as the same kind of thing, which is ridiculous and not based on any data. Fuck. And also there isn't really a huge problem with the with conversion therapy in the UK. We don't have a huge amount of people administering electric shocks to gay people to try and make them straight. It's something that happened in the 60s and isn't happening now.
I couldn't believe that was even still a thing, even slightly still a thing. I mean, when I first saw this and I didn't realize the externalities to people that are suffering with gender dysphoria for their gender identity, I'm like, what the fuck? What is this? Is this Alan Turing back from the dead to become medically castrated again? It feels so medieval. Yeah,
well, Alan Turing is, a famous victim of conversion therapy. So, yeah, chemical castration. I think he chose chemical castration because the option was going to jail for being gay. And obviously, jail is, if you're thinking of a punishment, jail is not where you want to send gay people. They're going to have a great time in there.
Didn't you end up? Well, wasn't it something that you said about some of the conversion therapy things were just putting loads of boys in a room with priests for a couple of weeks?
Yeah. Yeah. The Pray the Gay Away camps. One of my mates got sent to one, and it's ridiculous. I mean, if you take 200 gay teenage boys and put them at a camp together, overseen by priests, there's not going to be less anal sex going on at that camp. You know what I mean? So, yeah, pretty stupid.
It's the worst conversion therapy of all time. Everyone's just come back really, really skilled.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Or maybe it's like when your dad catches you smoking a cigarette and he makes you smoke the whole pack. These kids are going to come back from the camp, but arseholes like a car crash. So that's how it works.
Fuck. Have you heard of blackfishing? Do you know what this is?
No.
Okay, so Jesy Nelson, former Little Mix singer, addresses music video controversy.
Yeah, I did see this. So she's been accused of, and this has happened to a few people in pop. It's happened to Louisa Omlin, the comedian. So they get accused of appropriating black culture to try and be cooler.
Yes, which really, I mean, it is cooler. Black culture is a fair bit cooler. Like white people culture isn't exactly the coolest thing on the planet, and I don't think that any black person would say that it is either. Stick to your own cool culture. Former Little Mix singer Jesy Nelson said she never intended to cause offense after being accused of blackfishing in her debut solo track. The singer, 30, was criticized by some people in social media for her appearance in the video for Boys. Nelson was accused of blackfishing, a practice of a non-black person trying to appear black, but has denied using fake tan during... I can't believe that they're like, we'll get the Dulux color chart out. Jesy, have you gone below an 8 here? Because that 9, that is not to be used by you at all. Nicki Minaj has got based over the last couple of months, hasn't she?
I haven't seen anything by Nicki Minaj, but I do know that if you go to the whitest cities like Glasgow, Newcastle as well, where we're from, you go there, people really put on the tan and they go to tanning salons, and Glasgow, man, you'd think everybody's like Oompa Loompa colour. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that another problem isn't just the way that, because she didn't have dreads. It wasn't how would you say, archetypal, ancient, sort of the commonly held desires of black people and the way that their grandparents would have dressed. It's like wearing a pair of Air Force Ones. and baggy tracksuit bottoms. It's hardly what I see as the crux of black culture.
Absolutely. There's no do-rag, there's no, feathers or anything.
Oh, here was another one, actually. Nelson said she is fortunate to easily tan when in the sun and told Minaj, so she did a live. I can't believe that you need to go and do an Instagram live with Nicki Minaj to try and rehabilitate your public image. Told Minaj...
Is that what she did?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's hilarious.
Somebody had previously commented on her propensity to tan. Okay, so she's got an alibi to how easily she tans. She said that her hair is naturally curly after complaints that she had changed her style in the music video. She added, I genuinely didn't think I was doing anything wrong because I've got naturally curly hair. I'm looking at a photo of her and she's ginger, and I've never seen a black ginger person. So, I mean, if you want justification...
Yeah. I don't understand why people, when they get called out by stuff like this, why is she coming out and being like, oh, I tan really easily and I've got natural curly hair. Just come out and say, like, mind your own fucking business. Like, obviously women always change their hair. They want, if they've got straight hair, they want curly hair. If they've got curly hair, they want straight hair. It doesn't mean that they're calling for, the Fourth Reich to rise and dominate with Aryan nations. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, you're allowed to, like, put on a bit of makeup and change your hair if you want.
I don't know. It's the whole idea around now people sort of staying in their lane. Actors playing the appropriate role for whatever their gender, sexuality, orientation, background,
disability.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, which I mean, I don't know. Where do you stand on that?
Man, I think they're actors. They're acting, and I think if you narrow the field down, if you say that only only transgender people can play transgender roles, number one, you're narrowing the field potential talent down to an incredibly narrow field, and also you're making it less likely that those stories will get told. So that's two ways that it's negative for the film and for transgender people.
Also, you've had some pretty good actors come out of Scotland, and if they're only permitted to play Scottish people, they're fairly limited. I mean, no one was looking at Cillian Murphy when he did Peaky Blinders and saying, "Excuse me, Cillian, can we actually check if you weren't born in Ireland and were from the town of Solihull or whatever instead?" That's no one's fact checking him. So it's very much particular protected groups that have the problem.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And anything like that, where particular groups are sort of deified and placed higher than other groups on the sort of oppression pyramid. So nobody, a black person wouldn't get in trouble for straightening their hair. And a transgender person would get in trouble for playing a woman. Like if they're a transgender person, in fact, they'd be celebrated for it. So what that's doing is placing a seed of dissatisfaction in everybody's mind that why are these people getting treated different? Why do they get special treatment? Which obviously isn't good for social cohesion and the rights of everybody in the long run.
I saw you have a debate about censorship in comedy, which descended into the history of women's football. What happened there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, with Kate Smurthwaite. Do you know Kate Smurthwaite?
No, she's got very standy-outy neck veins. I noticed that you managed to cause some serious neck vascularity to happen during that debate. That was the main thing I took away from it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was hilarious. Basically, she so it was on Sunday. It was on GB News, and we were debating freedom of speech and comedy. And she came up with all these bizarre claims. Like she says, she hears racist jokes every month. She hears racist jokes told by other comedians at gigs she's doing, and like I don't hear racist jokes. I gig most nights, and I do working men's clubs and all the rest of it. I do shows in London. I do anything I'm booked for, Butlins, whatever. I don't hear any racist jokes, and I'm considered to be a far right Nazi, racist, homophobe, transphobe, and all the rest of it. So I think that I'd be put on bills with the racist comedians if there were any. I never hear any, and I know why I don't hear any, because if you told a racist joke on stage at a comedy club, people wouldn't like it because it's 2021. and we're performing in front of, every time we're performing in front of a group of people who are just, members of the public. So if you say anything that's socially unacceptable, they won't accept it because that's how socially unacceptable works. But yes, and Kate said she's, and she's doing all these like woke. The only gigs she does are
she's a comedian.
Super woke. She's a comedian.
You are kidding me. I could have sworn that she was some sort of, I don't know, journalist, editor, lady. I didn't know that she was a comedian.
Well, I haven't actually gigged with her in a comedy club since we did the Jersey Comedy Festival in like 2012 or something. So yeah, it's been like 8 or 9 years since I've actually performed with her. And so maybe she's not really a comedian. I looked on her gigs list online, and there's no gigs booked in. So I don't know where she's performing that other people are doing racist jokes. But I think she might have been lying. And yeah, she said the women's football thing, because people. She was saying it was right that Roy Chubby Brown should have been cancelled, and people were right to write in letters and stuff. So Roy Chubby Brown is due to perform in Sheffield, and he was cancelled by Sheffield Council because they said he doesn't reflect the values of Sheffield Council. And it's like, yeah, he's not supposed to reflect the values of Sheffield Council. He's not the mayor. He's a fucking comedian. And like, I don't want to go and see some like council value show. That sounds shit. That sounds so boring. I don't want, man, I used to work in local government and they're all so wasteful and boring and shit. We should just do away with them. Just get a small council that like collects the bins and keeps the roads in good nick. But yeah, so they cancelled Roy Chubby Brown. And she was saying it's right that they cancelled him. And I was just saying, I just don't think, if you don't want to go see a comedian, if you don't think a comedian's good or funny, just don't go and see them. I did a show at one of my favourite clubs in London, and somebody wrote a letter into the club, or wrote an email into the club saying, I came to see Leo Kearse's show in July at your venue, and it was horrifically offensive and horrible. And I came back to see it again in November, and it was still horrifically offensive and horrible. Please cancel him from your club. And it's like, instead of cancelling me, why don't you stop coming to the show? You know what I mean? It's absolutely ridiculous. I don't even think they were at the show because they said I was homophobic and all the rest of it. I didn't say anything. The club film everything because you've got to these days to cover yourself. And they reviewed the footage and realised I hadn't said any of the stuff that.
What do you mean that they need to film everything to cover yourselves? What's that?
So if somebody says, this person said something misogynist, they need to be able to review the footage and see.
No
what
way.
The person said.
And that's happening. That's common practice in the UK.
Yeah, it seems to be now. I record everything. Every show that I do, I record the audio. So, if anybody complains, then I've got that as a backup.
No fucking way.
That's people wonder why comedy is becoming incredibly bland and comedians are self-censoring so much,
That's wild.
Yeah.
So how did it get onto women's football? What's that got to do with it?
Oh, yeah, so women's football, I can't really remember. I just said, women's football is, shit. And I can't even remember. That's right. I said woke comedy. Woke comedy is like women's football. It gets written about a lot in the Guardian, but it's shit. And that wound Kate up. So I hammered it home some more, saying how I was going to get.
She had an idea around, was it World War II? When
so she said the reason women's football isn't popular isn't because it's shit. The reason women's football isn't popular is because, she genuinely said this with a straight face, is because it became incredibly popular during World War II when all the men were, at war, getting themselves blown up because the patriarchy favours men. And she said, so when the men came back from the war, the authorities suppressed women's football.
And we're now eating the progeny of that. That women's football was lambasted in the 40s and 50s and 60s, which has caused us today to have an aversion to watching women play football. Man, I'm more than happy to watch women's sport if they're good at it. But I watched a game.
Yeah, or if they're fit. I'll watch it if they're fit, like the volleyball in the Olympics.
Correct.
That's better than most sport. I mean, football.
It's barely a sport.
So.
Volleyball in the Olympics is barely a sport. It's softcore porn that gets played before the watershed.
Yeah.
I watched a game of cricket the 100, which was a competition this year. They did a special 100 ball game, and the way that they did it was they had the ladies game from the same teams, and then the men's game straight after each other, so you could go and watch. And I watched one innings have 8 dropped catches. Like, I can go and see an under 11s game and not see 8 dropped catches. And I'm like, look, I'm all for supporting women's sport, but if you can't fucking catch the ball, this is no longer a sport.
Think of the number of dents in the car park, and but the halftime sandwiches, just an amazing spread.
Well, that's only because you have a high proportion of female cricketers, I think, that are lesbian. So you've got like two really good people in the kit. I mean, I remember when it would be one of the lads that didn't have a partner, and it was his turn to make the lunches when we used to play cricket, and it would be him and whoever his housemates were, and it would be the worst spread. It's quite a good way to do it, because he'd never be asked back to do it. You would only ask the people that had female partners. So actually, that's one way to look at it. But yeah, man, I'm all for supporting women's sport if they're good at the sport. You can't force it down people's throats.
Yeah, and that's the thing now. Like, I mean, sport is pretty much a meritocracy. You know, if something's popular, if somebody wants to watch it, it's not like any promoter is going to be like, oh no, I'm not going to promote this because it goes against my sexist beliefs. They want to make money. So they'll put on women's football if it's going to shift tickets. But like, does Kate Smurthwaite have a season ticket for women's football? She doesn't.
Swansea Town, WFC or whatever, yeah.
Yeah. People talk it, but they talk the talk.
Here's a fucking good example. Think about the UFC. The UFC regularly has female fights as the title fight of the night, final fight of the night. Like, and those are unbelievably talented athletes, and I'll happily watch 2 women smash 7 shades of shit out of each other just as happily as I will a man. Like, and I don't care. They're faster. The knockouts are a little bit less powerful, but they're still like dope to watch. Down. Down. But 8 dropped catches. Now, if all that the girls did was circle each other in the ring and like do that thing, I wouldn't want to watch it.
Yeah.
Fuck, man.
8 drop catches. That is mad.
Disgusting. Did you see the hubbub around this University of Pennsylvania trans swimmer? You seen this one? No. Okay, so
because this trans athletes, that's an area where it does kind of a lot of the arguments do break down. You've got like Laurel Hubbard, who transitioned when she was in her 30s, competed as a male athlete previously. So it's like, that's not fair. You know what I mean? That is not fair.
No,
and
I mean, this was
Fallon Fox in UFC. Like the women that fought her said, I've never experienced strength like that. And obviously, because that's like a man who's like, totally hulked out and stuff. So you got like, going through male puberty conveys certain advantages to transgender athletes. You get like, bigger skeleton, stronger bone structure, greater muscle mass. It's easier to
being on a course of testosterone, a high course of testosterone compared with your gender for 35 years, and then decided to pivot out. So it's impossible
if you're doing steroids for 30 years and then
cycled off and said, right, I'm now going to compete. Yeah. It's impossible to beat her. Despondent female rivals say swimming against trans Leah Thomas is intimidating and discouraging after teammates spoke out and said, everyone knows it's wrong. She beat her next closest opponent by a full 38 seconds. And won pretty much everything, basically. Yeah. She broke 2 national records when she competed. She'd competed up until 2019 and then had a little break and come back. There's something, I don't know how you feel about this, man. There's something that feels particularly, I really don't know where I stand on the trans women in sports discussion, because it is, you do want people to be able to compete in their chosen pursuit, and if they're good and so on, but then also that there's this unfair advantage, but then making a trans women only division also doesn't really feel like a particularly good outcome. Making them continue to compete with men also doesn't feel like a particularly good outcome. I kind of struggle to see a good way to put this.
what about if we put them in the Paralympics, and then instead of women getting beaten by 38 seconds, it was somebody with Down syndrome getting beaten by like 4 hours and 12 minutes? Would that be a good solution?
No. No, we can't do that either. That's good suggestion, but I'm not convinced that that's going to work. But there's something that feels particularly egregious about it being college athletes or like kids, because you know that at that stage, there's more branches of life open to them, right? There's more paths that they could go down to sponsorships, scholarships, paths to go to university and move into professional sport and stuff like that. I don't know. There's something about that. Do you get that sense as well, that there's just something like extra unfair about trans athletes in college that are taking spaces from other athletes? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like, the whole thing about athletes is I feel like they've got an unfair advantage through some trick of biology anyway. So I'm kind of, and also I'm not a feminist. I'm delighted to see women upset that they're being beaten by a biological male. So I mean, I can't really see the downside. It's like, and you look at the women weightlifters that Laurel Hubbard was competing against. They weren't like dainty little like maidens. They look like big old lumps as well. I mean, obviously, if I was a woman or cared, then I'd think differently. But I genuinely just quite enjoy watching feminists and transgender rights activists tear each other apart on things like that.
I don't know what's going to happen as you continue rolling forward with the intersecting ideologies of whoever's got the most grievance. Like, it feels like it's got to be a snake that eats its own tail at some point. Do you not think? Yeah,
it's already so convoluted and so it's so communist in the sort of the way that ideology works that if J.K. Rowling pulls back the curtain to reveal the lie that you've got like if I said I'm a woman, like according to all these like woke ideologists, the trans rights ideologists, I'm now a woman, and it's like, well, I'm obviously not. I'm just.
There's a fundamental difference between you and Blaire White.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't know how that ends up, how this sort of situation ends up finishing itself, because it's going to fragment itself and continue to fracture into so many different groups and subgroups that what's left?
Yeah, and we're already seeing it happening with the LGBTQ community. So you've now got the LGB Alliance, because a lot of lesbian and gay people feel that they're being erased by, and quite rightly, because if somebody, if a child or a young person, teenager, whatever, presents with gender dysphoria, quite often that's because they've got they're same-sex attracted. And they're being sort of coached that that's because they're born in the wrong body rather than they're homosexual, and then they're put in the pathway to this conveyor belt to transitioning, and you can see a lot of lesbians are quite manly, quite butch, and a lot of gay guys are quite effeminate. So they'd be the ones being put on the path to transitioning now, and I mean this is actual state policy in Iran, which has got the highest level of transitioning in the world. But basically, being gay in Iran is illegal. So you've got the choice between you can either be gay and go to jail or be killed, or you can transition to being a woman and then it's fine. So you've got they're sort of. The state is transitioning thousands of people in Iran. And what we're seeing now is people wanting to detransition and reconcile with their biological gender. But it's difficult. Once you've had the puberty blockers and the hormones and the surgery, it's very difficult to untangle that and rework yourself. So I think, we're storing up problems. This is going to be the thalidomide of our era. 10 years' time, there's going to be so many people who are like, a confused 13-year-old and were sort of brought into this pathway to transitioning and are going to be absolutely distraught and wanting to detransition. And obviously, it's not. I'm not saying everybody is going to be like that. For a lot of people, it is the right thing to do, but they're scooping up everybody and applying the same treatment to everybody.
That's what Andrew Doyle talks about. The fact that he thinks a lot of gender reassignment for children is rehabilitated concern about homosexuality. It's rehabilitated homophobia looked at through a different lens that parents don't want. I can't remember who it was. He quotes this guy who said he knew that his little boy was always a girl when he said that he was attracted to guys, and he's just so glad that his son isn't mincing about talking to boys anymore. And you're like,
exactly. Pure homophobia.
Is no one fucking seeing this?
Yeah. That's basically Iran's state policy. That's the guy's basically channeling the Ayatollah Khomeini right there.
Fucking hell, man. I don't know. There was a Denver elementary school that put a sign outside advertising families of color playground night. So they'd essentially created a racially segregated playtime for equity.
They do this a lot. Sainsbury's did it as well. They had safe spaces for ethnic employees, which, the thing with any sort of separation by race is, it's separating people by race. It's, whether you say you're doing it for an altruistic or a positive reason doesn't matter, because you're separating by race, and then it gives sort of ammunition, or validates anybody who wants to separate people by race for nefarious reasons, for racist reasons.
There was was it a 12 weeks a slave workout that was released? Was that last year? Was that by Sainsbury's as well? Because and it was something like being a slave was hard, and so is this workout.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That wasn't Sainsbury's. That was a personal trainer.
Was it?
Then had an internet pylon, which is kind of unfair, because I think he was black. And he had this pylon. He just hadn't thought it through. But he's a personal trainer.
It is poor marketing. Yeah, he's thinking with his muscles.
But if he could think things through, he wouldn't be a personal trainer. You know what I mean? Getting paid like £12 an hour to help housewives do sit-ups. Obviously, it's not going to be the brain of Britain.
I don't know.
Sainsbury's,
the whole racially segregated thing is kind of a little bit of a weird one, because I think one argument that I saw to do with Denver, I don't know much about Denver. Apparently, not a lot of black people. You're finding a way for people to be able to create a community, but it feels like anything that's bureaucratically forced, top down, anything that's dictatorial and not just, look, if you want to hang together in the schoolyard or after school or when you collect people, like who the fuck's the elementary school to say that this is the way that we should exist in the world?
And it's terrible. It's drawing attention to racial differences rather than sort of, because I was always brought up, school taught us that, race is only skin deep. And obviously it's not. There's cultural differences and all the rest of it. But we were taught to sort of be friends with each other. We were in Scotland, so it didn't make any difference. There weren't any black people. But yeah, and certainly, I've got black friends who say, things are regressing, things are getting worse. Because it used to be that everybody would just hang out together, and now we're having this sort of top-down, enforced separation of people. And Sainsbury's, companies are exploiting it and exploiting the division. Sainsbury's had that terrible tweet that was, they basically said, anybody is welcome to shop in Sainsbury's, no matter what their race. And if you don't like it, go and shop somewhere else. And it's like, it's fine to say, everybody's welcome to shop in Sainsbury's regardless of their race. I mean, I'd assume that was the case anyway. I wouldn't assume Sainsbury's was racist, even though they're owned by the Qatari royals, which, they run an extremely racist country with a, genuinely, objectively racist regime that actually uses slaves. The slavery, it's mad that for all that people bang on about slavery, they only bang on about transatlantic slavery that finished 400 years ago and was ended by the British. Nobody bangs on about the fact that, there's more slaves now in the world than there was 400 years ago at the peak of transatlantic slavery.
No way.
And like in China, so you got like companies like Nike and Apple using Uyghur Muslim slaves. So they contract to the Chinese government. The Chinese government has around about 1 million Uyghur slaves held in work camps. So basically slave labor, basically concentration camps, but slave labor, and they have to work for the Chinese government. So Nikes get made there, and Nikes that are then sold by Colin Kaepernick as we're standing up for minorities. It's the most fucked up world. It's great being a comedian now because there's so much stuff to talk about. In the 90s, all I could talk about was airline food, but now there's all this genuinely horrific fascistic stuff going on.
And Sainsbury's, yeah.
Sainsbury's said, anybody's welcome to shop in Sainsbury's regardless of their colour, and if you don't like it, shop somewhere else. And it's like, well, what are the racist supermarkets then? If you're saying, Sainsbury's is a non-racist, anti-racist supermarket,
Waitrose.
Yeah, you're saying Waitrose is racist? Like, it's ridiculous. Obviously, none of the supermarkets are racist because it's 2021.
Fuck. There's something that feels quite uncomfortable about a company that is weaponizing social justice, ongoing social justice campaigns in order to monetize, especially when you think, okay, and the underpinnings of this are total bollocks. If you were using it, if the byproduct of you standing for a cause which is genuinely just was that maybe you gain some brand equity, whatever, like that's happened since the beginning of time. But if you're creating a fake problem or talking about a non-existent issue in order to then try and commercialize it, that just feels it's the stupidity that annoys me the most.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and the cynicism, and it's always these companies that are sort of pretending to be super woke and doing it for the right reasons, when obviously it's an advertising campaign. They've run it through focus groups and they've had boards look at it and stuff, and processed it and been like, this is the thing that's going to sell us more ice cream. Like Ben & Jerry's are constantly tweeting stuff and tweeting abuse at the government for their treatment of refugees. But then you go to Ben & Jerry's are like, we need to let all the refugees into the country. Then you go down to Ben & Jerry's, they lock the doors at night. It's like, so how come we're allowed to enforce that border? Like, why is the border around Ben & Jerry's allowed to be enforced? They're all full of nonsense. And also, by saying that, they say that Ben & Jerry's, they supported all the rioting and the looting in Black Lives Matter, so you should go and steal Ben & Jerry's.
I saw, because I've been out here for a little while, so I missed like all of the run up to Christmas, including the adverts. Wasn't there a kickoff about John Lewis as well? Wasn't there a fake scandal around the fact that it was a black family in the John Lewis campaign, which I just thought looked like a nice, it was an average advert, but just a nice family.
I would be amazed if there was anything other than a black family in an advert, for another probably about 18 months. And there's certainly no white couples. All the couples have to be interracial.
What do you think that's about? Why do you think that's happening?
Because of Black Lives Matter. All of a sudden, the same thing happened in comedy. If you look at TV comedy, it's all because most comedians are middle-aged white men, bald white men, because it's mostly men that want to do it. The UK's mostly got white people in it, and it takes a while to become good at comedy. So by the time you get good, you're like 45 or whatever. So most comedians that are good enough to watch are middle-aged white men. But if you look at TV comedy, it's all fat black women and 22-year-olds.
Well, what do you say to people that say, well, they haven't had their time in the limelight? This is an opportunity for previously marginalized groups to finally get some time on stage.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I mean, if somebody's got a YouTube channel, I think it's brilliant that TV is, writing itself into irrelevance. So you can either go and watch, a shocking set on Live at the Apollo by, a non-binary 22-year-old, ethnically mysterious person, or you can watch me. You know what I mean? So it's great. Long may the BBC continue to destroy itself, is what I say.
Yeah, so should someone step into a meritocracy in your view? Is there a point at which there needs to be, I don't know, like affirmative action to do with representation, or should it just be a complete free market?
I think seriously, there needed to be some sort of improvement in representation, and I still don't think we've got fair representation. Maybe in terms of ethnicity, but not in terms of class. And because people, if we've got a lack of Asian comedians or black comedians, that can be because there aren't enough black comedians to start off with. So they don't, if you're a black kid, you're not going to look at, or you might not look at Billy Connolly and be like, oh yeah, I want to be like him. But you look at Lenny Henry or Chris Rock because they're black. You know what I mean? So you're going to feel that affinity. So by putting people in those places, you're giving role models to the next generation. So yeah, I think it is positive. I think where it falls down though is, there's loads of good black comedians, loads of good female comedians, and they don't pick, when it comes down to tokenism, when they're picking people according to their demographics, like Nico Yearwood, the guy I do Free Speech podcast with. Man, that guy's just an absolute killer. He's so funny. He's got so much charm and charisma and wit. Like he's great off the cuff. His material's great. That guy could be huge. But he's not getting the breaks on TV. And it's not just because he's lazy, because he is lazy. But like, they look at him and they're like, nah, well, he's about 40. I don't think he's not right for us. We want a 22-year-old. A 22-year-old's going to come out and do like some absolute dog shit material about how basically young people aren't funny because not enough bad stuff has happened to them. But yeah, Nico's really funny and he's not getting the breaks. Same with the female. There's some hilarious female comedians that don't get a break because they're not good looking enough or too good looking or whatever it is. When the sort of powers that be are placing people based on their demographics, it's tokenism and it doesn't work.
But it's never based on class demographics. This is what Rogan said. Who would have thought that an episode with Snoop Dogg would have had some secret wisdom in it? But it did. And he said one of the reasons that the powers that be get people to focus on race is that it stops us from focusing on class. Yeah.
And I think we know that in the UK, class is a far bigger differentiator than race. Obviously, like if you talk to, I know some ethnic people who are incredibly posh, like Calvin Robinson, for example, and I don't think he gets a lot of discrimination based on his race, but it's, somebody who's got the same ethnicity but is working class is going to be treated a different way, and if you're dressed a different way and all the rest of it. I've certainly experienced classism, even though like the thing that pisses me off, like in London, I get I got knocked back for a job at Coutts Bank. This back, way back in the day, and I could sort of tell everybody else in the interview thing was like super posh and stuff. I could tell. I was like, man, in Scotland I'm posh. Don't be discriminating. You think because I'm Scottish, I'm not posh?
But the poshest person in Scotland is the poorest person in London.
I'm the poshest person in Scotland, you motherfuckers. And also your bank's owned by the Royal Bank of Scotland. So
give me my fucking really due. Give me my nation's desire. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Fuck. What have you got coming up next? What's next on the plate for you?
So yeah, hopefully I'm going to get over Omicron soon.
Oh fuck! Have you had to rearrange a ton of dates?
Yeah, I cancelled it, but I was supposed to headline for the Free Speech Union gig last night. And I was supposed to be up in Blackpool and Liverpool and Burscough, or whatever it's called, this weekend, but I've had to cancel those. So yeah, I'm just taking the opportunity to write stuff for my YouTube channel. So I'll be doing a new video. I'm going to do a video next about woke sports people, because we've got the Sports Personality of the Year competition coming up on the 19th. So I'm going to do, and all these people are like, man, Marcus Rashford, he's all like, oh, the government needs to provide free school meals to all the children and stuff. Then he's dodging his taxes. He's paying himself with a loan. So you don't need to pay tax on a loan. You can just not pay the loan back. So, if he paid his taxes, the government, if all these people, all these woke people are always like, the government needs to do this. It's like, man, you can give the government more money if you want. I don't want to give the government any more money, but you can, seeing as you think it's so important. And then the government can afford to give it, all the kids can get a free school meal and a Fabergé egg or whatever else they want. Like, you know what I mean? It's ridiculous. Gary Lineker's always like swanning around Twitter, being all like, criticising Lawrence Fox and whoever for being terrible people. And it's like, Gary Lineker makes his money from the BBC, which is basically taxpayers' money, and then he decides he doesn't have enough money from all the hundreds of thousands of pounds he gets each year from the BBC, so he sells crisps. He markets crisps to obese children who are at risk of diabetes. So he's basically deliberately killing children for money. It's like he's basically like Gaddafi's son. Gary Lineker's an absolute, you know what I mean? For these people to then try and take the moral high ground, it's like, how about you stop killing children, Gary? It's like he'd be selling cigarettes at a playground out of the back of a van if he had his choice. But instead, he's selling Walker's crisps instead.
Woke personality of the year then. So that's done. Where can people go if they want to check out the YouTube channel?
Yes, I've got a YouTube channel, just Leo Kearse. That's how you find it. Or my Instagram's Scottish Comedian. All one
No
word.
way, you've got Scottish Comedian on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't believe it was available either.
Fuck you, amazing. Daniel Sloss. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Man, it's been really good to speak today. I hope that you get over your Omicron and you have a good Christmas, and I will catch you in the new year. What's happening, people? Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that episode, then press here for a selection of the best clips from the podcast over the last few weeks. And don't forget to subscribe. Peace.